The right of return is a principle which is drawn from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, intended to enable people to return to and re-enter their country of origin. The 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees does not give refugees a right to return, but rather prohibits return to a country where he or she faces serious threats to his or her life of freedom. The Convention binds the many countries which have ratified it. By contrast, the right of return has not passed into customary international law, although it remains an important aspirational human right. Instead, international law gives each country the right to decide for itself to whom it will give citizenship. Background. Ancient precedents. There are various recorded cases in ancient history where people deported or uprooted from the city or homeland were allowed to return, typically when the balance of military and political forces which caused their exile had changed. A well-known example is the return to Zion, when King Cyrus the Great allowed the Jews expelled in the Babylonian exile to return and rebuild Jerusalem. Recorded in the Hebrew Bible, this case is often cited as a precedent by modern Zionism and also inspired other groups seeking to pursue their own claim for a right of return. The wars of classical Greece provide several more examples. In the Peloponnesian War, Athenians destroyed the island city of Melos, killed all adult male citizens which they caught and sold the women and children into slavery. Following Athens' defeat in 405 BC, the Spartan general Lysander expelled the Athenian settlers from Melos and restored the survivors of the original Melians to the island. The victorious Spartans and their allies made an effort to trace and liberate the dispersed Melians and restore them to their homeland. In the same war, the pro-Athenian city of Plataea was destroyed by its hereditary enemy Thebes and many of its citizens killed. Surviving Plataeans were harbored in Athens, where they lived for generations as a distinct community, hoping for a chance to return. This was facilitated in 386 BC, when Thebes was on the losing side in the Corinthian War. Thereupon, the Plataeans returned and rebuilt the city, but soon, the resurgence of Thebes and the creation of the Theban hegemony by Epaminondas led to the Thebans destroying Plataea again in 373 and driving its people into a second exile. Still, the Plataeans persisted in the aspiration of returning to the city. This was fully and permanently realized after Philip II of Macedon defeated the Thebans at the Battle of Chaeronea and his son, Alexander the Great, altogether destroyed Thebes. This enabled the exiled Plataeans to return and rebuild the city in 338 BC, with no apprehension of a further exile. In another context, the Thebans themselves acted as the generous returners of exiled people to their homeland. In 370 BC, the prominent Theban general Epaminondas arrived at Messenia, a region which the Spartans had conquered some 200 years before. Epaminondas freed the Helots of Messenia and rebuilt the ancient city of Messon on Mount Iotium, with fortifications that were among the strongest in Greece. He then issued a call to Messenian exiles all over Greece to return and rebuild the homeland. Modern legal situation. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights Article 13 states that everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. There is disagreement as to what this actually means in practice, as well as whether country refers to a state or a specific area of land. In addition, the change from state to country from the first sentence to the second clouds the issue. Much of the controversy surrounding such a right, however, derives from disagreements surrounding what in UDHR Article 13 is referred to as his own, because many countries are nation-states predicated on the right to national self-determination. Such countries often identify a special link between them and persons identified with the nation or people whose self-determination that country enables. National laws implementing a right of return tend to be predicated on that link, because they give people of a certain background preferential immigration. However, such laws are controversial, especially where they are perceived to be at the expense of other people who want to immigrate or return. Reacquisition. Some countries, such as the Philippines, have devised means to reacquire or retain former citizens who lost the citizenship upon accession to another country, particularly to recover the contributions and potential investment opportunities of former citizens abroad. Schemes such as these bear some resemblance to right of return plans, because they highlight how a homeland's motivation to build links of citizenship with diasporas may draw from potential investment, not just the nation-state's perceived cultural duty towards one or more particular peoples. Such schemes do not necessarily constitute rights of return, however, particularly where they target former citizenship holders rather than members of an ethnic group who may never have held citizenship, or whose diaspora location even predates state formation. Choice of a former citizen scheme, such as the Philippines Republic Act 9225, rather than a right of return such as those listed below, may be more closely associated with the historic circumstances of a people's dispersion and of nation-state formation, respectively, than with principal choices between them. Use of a right of return is therefore more likely in nation-states constituted more recently whose diasporas are long-standing, and less likely in nation-states constituted earlier whose diasporas were constituted more recently.